Today, we check in with SEC Media Days with a certain coach, and we wonder, what if?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, good morning. Welcome. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. You have found the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Is it July 15th? It's the middle of July. You could say the middle of the summer. So it's all downhill from here on out. Nebraska will be at Big Ten Media Days as we continue to advertise 1 week from today in Las Vegas. And then in 2 weeks, they'll be into preseason camp. Huskers are going to go back into the dorms this year. So that's fun for everybody involved.
Totally.
Yeah, fun for the media. We'll get to ask these questions like, what's it like to move into the dorms and live with your teammates for a week in the summer before football season starts?
Yeah, I can't wait to ask those questions for the third year in a row.
Super exciting answers. Yeah,
as always. But no, I think it's a good team building thing. It's maybe we won't ask about it this year. Maybe we won't care about it. But maybe there'll just be a reference to it at some point in the season. Man, I remember. I think this team really came together because we spent that week in the dorms.
Yeah, it was a big topic 2 years ago. You remember in 2023 when Matt Rule did that, really the first time in modern Nebraska history that they'd done anything like that. So you have these players, and now because of the money that they make through NIL and rev share, they can have these awesome accommodations. They can be Matt Rule's neighbor down in the Haymarket, or live by they can live with Dana. They can live by Dana Holgerson. He can walk out of his condo, and across the hall can be his wide receiver. But
yeah, they'll park their Lamborghinis at Selleck. It's look a little odd. That's for sure.
Now nobody's driving a Lamborghini that I know of.
Okay,
among Nebraska's, you have to go to the SEC for that. Which leads us to our main topic of today's show. Monday in Atlanta, the SEC Media Days got underway, or they call it the SEC Kickoff. It's Media Days. And I heard, as I watched in the background all day, a little bit from Brian Kelly, a little bit from Shane Beamer, a little bit from Clark Lee. He's dry, by the way. And I heard a lot from Lane Kiffin. Did you have this experience?
I did. By the way, on Clark Lee, he doesn't really need to say anything because I think his quarterbacks got him covered.
He's balancing out Diego Pavia. Yeah. Okay. That might be what it is.
Everybody wanted to hear from Diego Pavia yesterday, and
the bow tie going.
Yeah, he came through. No doubt. I think if I were to suggest anything to you, if you wanted a long, a 5 to 10 minute thing, go watch Lane Kiffin with his about a 9-minute appearance on the Paul Feinbaum show. And they are historically a hilarious match together. It's unclear if you're just watching for the first time whether they actually dislike each other or not.
Yeah, you can't tell. Well, if you know, you know.
Which they don't, but they're both just really dry, and apparently they don't mind awkward silences and dead air, and they just are kind of like, yeah, well, you told me that I was going to get so they're just constantly jabbing at each other for 10 minutes. It's a great, I think I tweeted it out yesterday, so you can go check it out there. It's so good. And then on a variety of other topics too, Lane Kiffin is unapologetically Lane Kiffin, as he always has been.
Lane and Paul, they could take their act on tour.
Oh, yeah.
They could go for certain through the SEC and draw big crowds. I'm not saying
TV shows made out of less. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. The sports writer and the millionaire football coach, with the family that he puts all over social media. So on a serious note, before we get into the main topic with Lane Kiffin And I would second your recommendation about finding his sit down on the set of the Paul Feinbaum show. It's a dynamic that just does not exist between a media figure and a college football coach anywhere else besides with those two. But on a serious note, so Lane and his brother Chris and their older sister Heidi, they lost their dad, Monty Kiffin, a year ago this summer. And you know, Monty Kiffin, of course, native Nebraska legend, Lexington, Nebraska, I believe. He's from the
that's right.
area out in the southwestern corner of the state. And then Nebraska defensive coordinator under Tom Osborne, like, has a place in as an icon in the state of Nebraska. He passed away, and it was big news last summer. And of course, the one of the grandfathers of the Tampa 2 defense, longtime NFL defensive coordinator, football defensive royalty. Well, his wife and the mother of Lane Kiffin, Robin Kiffin, she passed away last month, and this was more, I think, unexpected and just tragic news for the family. So Lane, in his introductory speech, and then in a lot of the side interviews that he did, talked openly about losing both of his parents in the last 12 or 13 months, and how those struggles and difficulties have allowed him to become a better football coach and help his players deal with tough times. So the older that Lane Kiffin gets, and he just turned 50, he's the same age as Matt Rule and Scott Frost. The older he gets, the more I like him. The more I like Lane Kiffin, his ability to be introspective, to look at himself, make fun of himself when he's talking to Paul.
Yeah.
And just be this figure in college football who is so different from what we thought we knew about Lane Kiffin when he was a brash, young OC for Pete Carroll, who got hired as a head coach too early by Al Davis. What a career arc he's had.
He you know what's funny? He actually made reference to his time with the Raiders yesterday in that interview when he said I was, trying 67-yard field goals. Famously, that happened with Sebastian Janikowski or whatever it was, 73 yards or something.
70 plus, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a 70-plus yard field goal. So that was pretty funny. That is definitely part of the evolution of Lane Kiffin. You said it. I think he used to take himself really seriously and viewed himself as, I have to be this, and this, because like you just explained, he's the son of coaching royalty, and therefore he needs to be coaching royalty and all this stuff. And at a certain point, I don't know when it was probably when he got, when he got fired at any one of
the Raiders
he got fired from. Yeah.
USC. Yeah.
Or maybe he was humbled when he went and worked with Nick Saban at Alabama. He just stopped caring. Like, I think he just stopped caring about what people thought about him, and that has aged tremendously for his career. He has made appearances at the College World Series, just kind of walking around over the last couple of years, bringing his kids up, whatever. He'll talk to you, but he'll like talk to you like a real person, and you go up to him and, like, googly eyed. People go up to him googly eyed. They're like, "Oh my God, you're Lane Kiffin." He's like, "Yeah, yeah." So he just kind of hangs out. But he's a really good college football coach, and he definitely has got something brewing at Ole Miss.
So I want to look at it this way. When Lane got into coaching in 1997, that was his first job out of school. He was a Fresno State quarterback, and he was going to go into coaching, college quarterback, son of Monty Kiffin. And he got started right as the world was changing under the feet of Nebraska fans, because this was Tom Osborne's last year as a head coach. And the next year, Frank Solich took over. Pieces on Nebraska's staff were moving. Lane Kiffin was moving annually to new jobs on his way up the ladder from 1998 to 2001. And he ended up with Pete Carroll at USC for 6 years before Al Davis hired him as the head coach of the Raiders in 2007, which is also the time that Nebraska had to make its third coaching move. Well, it's second. The first one was Tom Osborne's decision, but there was a decision in 2004 to hire Bill Callahan, and then a decision after the 2007 season to go to Bo Pelini. This is when Lane Kiffin went to the Raiders. And then for the last 15 years, or the next 15 years, from 2007 to 2022, Nebraska changed coaches, permanent coaches. We're not talking about the interims here, 4 times, from Callahan to Pelini, Pelini to Riley, Riley to Frost, Frost to Rule. Kiffin, during that same period, was fired after 2 years in Oakland, went to Tennessee, then to USC. He was fired there after 3+ seasons. Then he went to Alabama as Nick Saban's OC, to Florida Atlantic, and at Ole Miss for the last few years. His brother, Chris, coached under Pelini at Nebraska. It's almost an upset, Connor, that Lane never through this period ever made his way to Lincoln as a part of a Nebraska coaching staff. And I wonder, what if, to get back to the question from the open of the show, what if that would have happened? What kind of fit would he have been?
It's a great question, because I think his, there's obviously a bunch of connections, like you just explained, but it never felt destined, like a lot of these have. I mean, certainly Frost was that way. But it never felt destined that he was going to end up at Nebraska. The only real personal connection for him is obviously that his dad coached there, and he was born in Lincoln. Lane was, but lived here for a short period of time. So
he had family that remained in this part of the country for a good chunk of his life too. Yeah. So would visit here. Yeah.
I mean, I think at various times when Nebraska's made a coaching change over the last couple decades, his name has come up, and the general response that we get back is like, yeah, I just don't know if it's a fit from a personality standpoint, and I think maybe Nebraska fans have softened on that idea over the years of what exactly needs to happen when you're the head coach at Nebraska, and maybe Kiffin has changed a little bit as well, so maybe that takes on a different light now. But that's kind of always the general feedback that I've always gotten when I bring him up.
Yeah, and I feel like they've just always missed each other by like a year. Like Kiffin has found a new job, or has been ready to move on to a new job, or has gotten kicked out of a job at like 1 year too soon or too late from when Nebraska was in the market to go find the guy to return it to glory. So I think it would have worked if it had happened at some point along the way. And obviously Lane Kiffin at age 50 is a different coach than what he was at age 35, and Nebraska's a different place today from what it was in 2010. But I think if the stars had aligned, it could have been a match made in heaven. And then we'll finish with this. Is the door closed? Could it ever happen again? It seems that Lane Kiffin has found his forever destination in the SEC at Ole Miss as a place that can bring in all the talent that he would need to win a national championship or compete for a national championship. But there is that you just never know. And he's never coached in the Big Ten. Seems like an SEC guy at this point. I guess USC's in the Big Ten, but it wasn't when he was there. So could it ever happen? Could the stars align to bring Lane Kiffin to his father's alma mater at some point before he retires?
I don't think the door is closed. I think it would be. I don't think the door is closed on like almost anything ever. Like, you just never say flat out no. But what you just said is always been the something for me that's just off. It just always has seemed like an SEC guy to me. And so I wonder how it would work here at a place that takes itself really, really seriously, and the pressure is high and all of those things. And obviously Lane thinks a lot of himself as well. And you wonder kind of what type of challenge he'd be in for. He seems like a guy who, in the past experiences in his career, would probably tell you this, that maybe is a little bit like Frost in the sense that he's not a huge fan of the fishbowl, type of activities. But I'm not sure on that. I'd say the door isn't closed, but it seems unlikely. It seems like it maybe would have happened already.
Yeah. That'll be sad. That'll be sad. You know, sometimes you get the shout outs to Nebraska from Lane Kiffin. Somebody will post a nostalgic photo online, and Lane will tag Husker football in his tweets. So anyway, we'll probably never know, but something on a mid-July Tuesday morning to ponder. All right, when we come back, we will go back to SEC Media Days, talk about a little bit more of what's going on there, what you might hear today, how that could or could not affect Nebraska. And there's a new list out there that we want to get to. This one involves the quarterback down in Lincoln. That's next. All right, but first, a word from Game Time and a question to start this word from Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it is the day of the game and suddenly you realize you want to be there. You want to be in the stands at Memorial Stadium. That's exactly where you should be, and it's where Game Time comes in. The easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress is, yes, Game Time. When you save on tickets, you give yourself extra room to splurge on food, drinks, merch at the game that you're going to attend, because Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app tend to drop the closer you get to kickoff or the first pitch or the tip or the puck drop. They've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying tickets. You can see the seat views in the app right before you buy. There's no confusion. You know exactly where you're going to be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, welcome back. Excuse me, Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. SEC Media Days Day 2. We'll have Georgia, Auburn, Tennessee, and Texas today. I am sure we'll be on day 2 out of 4 of the league, telling everyone how they really like to play. Well, they have the hardest schedules out there. I was watching another part of the Feinbaum show yesterday where there was, I think Pat Forty was on there, and it was brought up with a variety of different guests on the show. And they were talking about how the Big Ten's non-conference schedule is a piece of cake, which admittedly it is, but people like to forget that they play one more conference game than the SEC, which plays FCS schools in November. But that's neither here nor there. A lot on the playoff yesterday, where the SEC doubles down on the idea that it wants to do the 5+11 model, and the Big Ten seems to be on its island right now. So we'll see if Tony Petitti vigorously defends that idea on Tuesday when he speaks at Big Ten Media Days in Vegas.
Yeah, I don't know how that conversation is going to go, because as you said, the other major conferences have aligned behind the SEC. We heard from the Big 12 and Brent Yormark, its commissioner, last week, that the Big 12 for some reason wants the 5+11 format. I believe that's where the ACC stands on this thing. So the Big Ten is probably not going to get its way, and it could use that leverage maybe to like negotiate something else that it wants. I don't. After what I heard from the SEC yesterday, I don't envision that the SEC is going to say, "All right, we'll compromise. No. You take the 5+11. We'll play 9 conference games." They don't seem all that close to instituting a 9-game conference schedule. In fact, Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, stood in front of everyone and, wagged his finger at the media in the room who would dare to suggest that the Big Ten's 9-game conference schedule is in any way more difficult than what the SEC does with its 8 games. And he laid out with some kind of fuzzy math that the SEC teams all play 9, or in some cases 10, power conference foes. Mm-hmm. What he failed to do was to mention how that compares to the teams in the Big 10, the Big 12, and the ACC, who all play, well, in the case of the Big Ten, all play 9 power foes within their conference, plus in many cases, not if you're Penn State. Hello, what's going on in Happy Valley? Most all play additional power foes out of conference. So you get 10 and sometimes even 11 conference foes. The SEC, however you want to slice it, the SEC is behind with its willingness to play major conference opponents. And they will tell you it's because the teams in the SEC are better. There is data that supports a different argument. So we're going to continue to go round and round on this thing. One thing that Sankey did say that I thought was notable was if they can't see eye to eye on this, they can't agree, then it's within like the zone of being realistic that they might just stick with a 12-team CFP in 2026 and not even expand the thing. And I don't know if he's bluffing on that or what.
Well, but like Mitch, that's an odd thing to use as a bargaining chip because I don't think the Big Ten cares. I don't think very many people care about sticking at 12 or going to 16, with the exception of the conference commissioners themselves who want to get richer, I suppose.
Yeah, they'll make more money. I think a lot of people in the Big Ten and the SEC. I mean, I heard Shane Beamer say he's all for. I think Matt Rule has said he wants the more the better. I don't sense this this really definitive off with 12. We need 16 or we need 14. They just wanted to expand. More opportunity is better.
I thought it was an odd thing to use as a bargaining chip because I think the Big Ten would probably just say, okay, fine. But once again, I don't think the Big Ten is super dug in on this. I think they found themselves on an island by accident. That's just my read on the situation. So
yeah, I think they thought they would have more support. I mean, who's thinking about 5 + 11 3 months ago?
I could see any number of options of what of how Petiti talks about this on Tuesday, next Tuesday. I wouldn't be surprised if he just rolled over and was like, yeah, I think actually we're going to do the 5-11 thing now. Everybody happy? Cool. I wouldn't be particularly surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they wrap themselves into a ball and was like, you know what, since we've been put on this island, we're going to defend it now with all of our might and all of our, and all of our strength. And so we don't even believe in it, but we love it, that type of thing. So
right.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Tell me what you think. The main benefit of the 4 + 4 and then whatever other numbers come after that versus the 5 + 11, the main benefit of the way the Big Ten wants to do it as the Big Ten sees things is that you take more control away from the committee. You're taking the decisions out of the committee's hand and making them somewhat automatic and decided on the field. And you get this potential wild weekend on conference championship weekend.
Yeah, I don't think they care about, and frankly, I don't think any of the conference commissioners care about what the product that we get in terms of how it works out. I just think they care about access and availability, and they care about getting the most amount of teams in, so they could tell everyone that we got the most amount of teams in and make the most money off of the units from the playoffs, and say that they won the national championship, which the Big Ten has the ability to say that they've won the last 2 at the moment. So that could be a bargaining chip, but it's just automatic bids, which once again, I do think the Big Ten, is mistaken in this because there's a world where they're basically capping themselves if you're doing the 4 + 4 + 2 + 2 + 1 + 1 model, where you can only get 5 on a given year. And if you open it up a little bit more wide open, you could potentially get more than that. So I think
there's not a great reason why any of these conferences support the model that they support. There are going to be years where the 5 + 11 would be better for the Big Ten, and there'll be years where the other one would be better for a school from the Big 12. The Big 12 gets one team in a 5 + 11 in the first year, and then again in the second year, as would have been the case last season with Arizona State winning the league. There would not have been a Big 12 team among the next 11 if it had gone 5 + 11 last year.
Correct.
And that's how it's going to roll. All right, I'm sure we'll hear more from the likes of Kirby Smart, Hugh Freeze, Josh Heupel, and Steve Sarkisian today in Atlanta. Lots of heavy hitters. It's a heavy hitting day from SEC Media Days on this Tuesday. So pay attention to what's going on there, how it affects your team, how it affects college football. After the break, we are going to talk about that list that involves Dylan Raiola. That is next. Okay, we promised it. So USA Today has released a list of the top 25 quarterbacks in college football. Cade Klubnik of Clemson is number one. Is he the consensus now? I mean, or is Arch Manning, like when the All-American teams come out, like the preseason All-American teams, I'm hearing a lot of Cade Klubnik at the top, but I don't view him in that way. Like he's not the Heisman favorite necessarily. Drew Aller is 2 on this list. There are 5 from the SEC in the top 8. It's a crowded field of, I think, what people view as excellent quarterbacks in college football, but there isn't that guy at the top that's like, oh man, he's the face of this thing, unless you're talking about Arch Manning, who's unproven largely on the field.
Yeah, I don't think that there is a consensus. I think he's one of the most established guys, on one of the best teams who has a pretty high ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
So I think he checks, Klubnik checks those boxes, and therefore he gets, number 1 rankings. Aller is almost exactly the same way, right? He's been around for a while. He's on one of the best teams in the country, and he's probably going to go pretty high in the draft, and he has all the tools and stuff like that. Arch Manning doesn't have the experience part, but has the other things, right? So I don't think there's like there's not a quarterback returning to college football this year who like, yeah, this is definitely the guy that everybody has to be better than to win the Heisman or be the best quarterback in the country. And that's what makes it cool. And usually in years like that, you see somebody jump up from, not the group of the top 5 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets to the rest of the list here.
Like an Ashton Genty last year, of course, was a running back, but definitely came from off the radar to be a major factor in the Heisman race. So from the Big Ten, after Drew Aller at number 2, you have Luke Altmaier of Illinois at number 13, Nico Iamaleava of UCLA at number 16, Dylan Raiola at number 17, Oregon's Dante Moore at 18, Fernando Mendoza of Indiana at 20, and then Julian Sayin of Ohio State at 24. That one might be the most interesting to me because it's got the most volatility for sure. Like if Julian Sayin breaks out, like he's going to be number 3 all of a sudden on that list instead of 24.
Yeah, it's always funny to do what they do with the Ohio State quarterbacks when there's a new Ohio State quarterback, because we're not exactly sure who the starter is going to be yet. But at the same time, whoever is the starter is probably a Heisman candidate, and that's kind of how it works at Ohio State. But Raiola at 17 is like kind of interesting. I think the sort of thought on him is a little bit all over the board this summer. I think there's people being patient with what he's done so far, and it's just like, yeah, it hasn't really blown me away. People like to put him up against DJ Lagway, who's a top 10 quarterback on this list, both 5-star recruits in their recruiting class. Lagway is 7 on this list, and Lagway didn't play all of last year because there was Graham Mertz, I think, still at Florida, but he stepped in late, and there was some volatility in his game as well. And Raiola had better complete season stats last year. And so people like to match those two up against each other. Lagway is a little bit more of a dynamic athlete, and Raiola more of your traditional quarterback pocket passer type.
Don't sleep on Dylan's athleticism here after this offseason of him getting fit. I think, but yeah, Lagway's like he's more naturally dynamic from the athletic standpoint. Right. It's interesting that he's getting so much run this offseason because DJ Lagway has not been like dragged through the kind of stuff that Dylan Raiola did last year in going in experiencing an entire season. Like I heard the sorry for not like knowing where this comment came from, but somebody in the media, or it may have been Dana Holgerson in a different interview than the one that I did, said that he thought that Dylan hit the freshman wall in the middle of his freshman season. I think Steve Sipple did an interview with
Sipple.
Holgerson in early July, and it was in there. And yeah, like that's a big thing, because if you clear that wall and then you come out the other side and have a couple of games at the end of your freshman season, like that's a big deal for the way the sophomore season can get going. And Lagway, I don't know that he's been through that yet. Like he may have that sophomore slump, whatever, at the beginning or somewhere in this run this year. So there are reasons, I think, to be more bullish on Raiola, just because of the development that he's been through than Lagway. But because we haven't seen that dip from Lagway, he's 10 spots up the ladder on this list. I think so. Dylan Raiola, like he's a 7. Like if you did all the preseason All-America teams, like I think Phil Steele does like 4 fourth team preseason All-Americans. Yeah. If you got down to the 17th team preseason All-America team, All-America. Hey, there's Dylan Raiola right there from Nebraska. He's a 17th team preseason All-American. That's probably not like the way that Nebraska drew it up when he came in as a 5-star, but it's a good spot for Dylan to be in, like just lurking under the radar, so to speak.
And like I said, like, there's you don't have definitive top guys right now. So I do think there's some room for movement there too. Like you said, I think he's in a pretty solid spot.
Yeah. All right, let's get to we got the Bowl of Fascination. Real quickly, Nebraska baseball in the Major League Draft on Tuesday. Mason McConaughey, the Huskers ace who was hurt early last season, went in the 4th round to the Rangers. So expect him to sign and forego his remaining season of eligibility. That's the expectation, right? Don't you think?
I would imagine. Yeah. So that's a pretty high draft pick, yeah.
And then Luke Broderick, Nebraska's closer from last season, 14th rounder to the Colorado Rockies. He's gonna sign also. 2 newcomers who were expected to be at Nebraska this fall: Cash Kuiper, right-handed pitcher from Murray State, out of the portal, was a 12th round pick to the Tigers, and then an outfielder out of high school in Minnesota, Carter Gwost, went in the 17th round. Home run derby last night. My pick to win, Cal Raleigh. He got it done. Did you enjoy the ESPN broadcast? You had to watch the stat broadcast because it's the only way that you could actually, on ESPN2, it's the only way that you could actually see what was happening in the event. Yeah, I don't know what they were doing with their cameras on ESPN, but you couldn't tell what was going on.
Well, I mean, they're doing 5 swings in 10 seconds basically, so you have to like split screen the thing, and it has become a really, really hard event to follow. But usually the end is exciting, and the StatCast broadcast.
The best part of it, other than O'Neal Cruz hitting 500-foot home runs, was Vinny Pasquantino, who was not in the event. But Vinny, our Royals first baseman, incredible social media presence. Like,
it's like I'm just gonna jump on, sit on my couch, I'm just gonna rip off like 40 tweets. That's pretty good.
Good job, Vinny. All right, we got like 2 minutes left. The Bowl of Fascination. We've been through 6, pulled 6 names out of the bowl. We got number 7 today. Back to the defensive side. We talked about a linebacker yesterday with Javen Wright, and we're going back to that position group today, but this is the jack position. And really, we could have gone with either of 2. So the name that came out is
Willis McGahee. Okay. Yes. Willis McGahee, the 4th. People have really, really high expectations for Willis McGahee coming off of last year for good reason. Like I think, he's a part of the group of young guys who, if their careers progress the way that we think they will be anchors of the defense, like starting this season. So I mean, I have really high hopes for him. I think you hope that he's surrounded by a bunch of people who are really good and doing their jobs as well. That way he can kind of go out and make plays, because I think that's when he's at his best.
I think much of the excitement, or some of it, comes from how he looked in the Pinstripe Bowl, because all of a sudden he was really flashing and making plays, it looked like, he went through a transition from the end of the regular season. And I think, the season gets long for a freshman. So to take a step back in the month of December and prepare himself for that game, it showed. Like, he took that seriously, and I think his just the way that we viewed him coming out of the season was different because of the bowl game experience. And so Nebraska has Dasan McCullough, who it went and got from the portal, Oklahoma, former Oklahoma, Indiana linebacker. They're going to play the same position. And I think this actually makes Willis McGahee better and more fascinating to us, because he's not going to have to play every snap. Like, you may have him out there for 35 snaps, and he's going to be highly effective and efficient in those plays, because he has a running mate in the more experienced McCullough.
All right, stay tuned. There is plenty more fascinating names out there to get to over the next couple days before we wrap this thing up. And media days is on the horizon. We're 1 week away. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out The Portal Show with Brian Smith. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.